we're going, we don't need roads.
This is your host Joey Cruel, and you are listening to Relentless Flashbackin. In every episode, I will travel back to a certain year of the past and I'll talk about its historical events, stuff, toys, cars, TV, movies, and music. You'll find Relentless Flashbackin on Mixcloud, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. With this episode, I'll travel back to 1985 and I'll talk about the news and the TV. The 80s are clearly, without any doubt, the best decade ever if we talk about modern Western civilization. Of course, they aren't perfect. There are also dark sides, but the 1985 proves that the 80s are excellent, bodacious, and outrageous. Let's start with bad news. In 1985, the terrorism level is still low, but there are 33 attacks in the world and 15 of these are on the Western soil. The Abu Nidal organization, a Palestinian terrorist group, hits our land 4 times. Germany, Spain, Malta, and simultaneously Italy and Austria, leaving 80 dead. Hezbollah, an Islamic terrorist group, hits 5 times. Greece, Spain, and 3 times in Paris, leaving 3 dead and countless wounded. One of the most serious terrorist attacks, also for its aftermath, is the hijack of the Italian ship Achille Lauro. After a day of tension and a murder of an American citizen, the 4 terrorists flee to Egypt. Following the lies of the Egyptian government and the excessive calm of the Italian one, the USA finally locates the terrorists, and a formation of F-14s finds the flight 2843 with the terrorists on board. They demand to divert the plane to Sigonella in Italy, only to receive a denial from the pilot of the flight 2843. The fleet of F-14s turns on the lights, and suddenly the Egyptian pilot realizes that he is surrounded by advanced warplanes. Everything is running smoothly, but in the airport, when the American forces surround the plane, ready to capture the terrorists, the military chief and their leader, the Italian military forces, surround the Americans because it's Italian soil. Every government has its own guilt, so there is a critical diplomatic crisis between Italy and USA. But after 5 hours of negotiations, USA concedes the Italian claim of jurisdiction over the terrorists. Sadly, the result is distressing. The Italian government will let flee the military chief and the leader of the terrorist group. And, if it isn't enough, after 6 years they will lose tracks of the 2 terrorists on parole, and after 24 years they will free the other 2 terrorists. At least the American operation that led to find the plane is a success, and it's celebrated by Ronald Reagan.
These young Americans sent a message to terrorists everywhere. A message: you can run, but you can't hide.
So the American people are not, I repeat, not going to tolerate intimidation, terror, and outright acts of war against this nation and its people. And we're especially not going to tolerate these attacks from outlaw states run by the strangest collection of misfits, Looney Tunes, and squalid criminals since the advent of the Third Reich.
The rest of the attacks are in Spain, France, Greece, and for 2 times in Canada, causing more than 300 dead, most of them in the ill-fated Flight 182, departed from Montreal. In 1985, the wreck of Titanic is located in North Atlantic, but another ghost of past appears. Walter Reeder was a German officer of the Waffen-SS during the Second World War. In 1948, was condemned to life imprisonment for crimes of war. He was the commander during the Marzabotto massacre with more than 700 dead civilians and the Vinca massacre with more than 100 dead civilians. But in 1985, the Italian government had released the 70-year-old man in spite of the protest of the Italian population. And when he arrives in Austria, there is another insult to injury. The Austrian defense minister, Friedhelm Frischenschlager, already known as a Nazi supporter, welcomes him with a handshake. Like a a war hero and not a repulsive war criminal. This is the year that the discovery of the Antarctic ozone hole by the British Antarctic Survey scientists is first reported in Nature magazine. The rapid depletion had previously been dismissed as a measurement error, but finally is widely recognized and reported in the press. The ozone layer is a protection against UVB wavelengths of ultraviolet light that can cause cancer and other negative effects. The discovery led to identify the main cause of the ozone depletion, which of course is anthropic. The manufactured chemicals will be banned thanks to the Montreal Protocol that will be adopted in 1987 and that will came into effect in 1989. It's expected that the ozone layer will recover around 2070. The Montreal Protocol is a great result, but it's not enough. The governments are still blinded by money and power. Just to confirm that, 2 French agents are sent to New Zealand to sink the Greenpeace ship the Rainbow Warrior on its way to a protest against a planned French nuclear test in Mururoa. They detonate 2 bombs and a photographer drowned on the sinking ship. The shameful and cowardly attack causes a scandal that overwhelms the French government, that finally admits its responsibilities. Unfortunately, we have to say farewell to things we used to love. British Telecom announces that it's going to phase out its famous red telephone boxes, and the US Route 66 is officially decommissioned. And now let's talk about good news. In 1985 the wealth is still high, the buying power of the middle class is still alive and well, and there isn't a war of major proportions and world-changing like the Vietnam War or the Gulf War. There is a war called the Cold War between USA, where President Ronald Reagan is sworn in for a second term, and a USSR, where Mikhail Gorbachev becomes leader of the Soviet Union. The first step toward the end of the Cold War is on November 19th. In Geneva, there is the first meeting between US President Ronald Reagan and Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev. In this year, the first smoking ban is passed in Colorado, USA, so you can smoke in restaurants anymore. And the DNA is first used in a criminal case. In Los Angeles, since the 70s, pollution and heavy traffic jams led to calls for a subway system. In 1985, the construction begins, and finally, the metro rail system will be operative in 1990, more than 25 years after the final streetcar line closed. On October 3rd, there is the maiden flight of the 4th space shuttle, called Atlantis, that will be displayed at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex in Florida after 33 missions and 26 years. The music tries to help Africa. The Live Aid is a dual-venue concert that takes place on the 13th of July at the same time in London and Philadelphia. Among the bands there are the Beach Boys, The Who, Queen, Judas Priest, Rio Speedwagon, Black Sabbath, and a sort of Led Zeppelin reunion with Phil Collins on the drums that's harshly criticized. There is also the performance of the supergroup USA for Africa, built around a large bunch of major pop stars, that released early 1985 the charity single We Are the World, written by Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. But this year, another supergroup is formed, Highwaymen, composed of 4 of the biggest country artists: Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and Chris Christopherson. They released their first album in 1985, called Highwaymen, which will be followed by Highwaymen 2 in 1990, and The Road Goes Forever in 1995. That will be their last album. The best way to describe their music is an overdose of pleasure, thanks to the wonderful voices of the 4 outlaws. When you are in a melancholy mood and you want some time to think, they are the right stuff. Let's keep talking about music, because the 1985 gave us a great masterpiece that sadly is overlooked. That's the Stuff is the second album by Autograph. It's pure 80s hard rock, filled with energy and positive vibes that celebrate the excessive magnificence of the 80s. As a matter of fact, only in this golden age we can listen to motivating lyrics as the ones that you can find in songs like You'll Get Over It or the title track. The vinyl proceeds without breaks and without fillers. On the cover there is a Genoid, a female robot, designed by Hajime Soroyama, who will create the cover of the awful Just Push Play by Aerosmith. In 1986, the album will be released again, but with a slightly different gynoid and with a blue background instead of the red one. And the beautiful song Six String Fever will be replaced by the cover of We Are an American Band by Grand Funk Railroad. Perhaps the operation will be made to distinguish the band from the boring Soviet group Autograph. Luckily, in 2009, the great music label Rock Candy will reissue the album, restoring the original tracklist and putting the cover song as a bonus track. Autograph was founded in 1983, and although they were an unsigned band, they played 48 shows with Van Halen in 1984, which brought them to sign a contract with the RCA in the same year. Then they published their first album. Unfortunately, in 1989, after the release of their third album, they will split up. The forced change of music taste in the 90s will prevent a reunion. The two singles, That's the Stuff and Blondes in the Black Cars, are huge songs, and I recommend to search the videos because they are totally awesome. But tonight I prefer to give you this aggressive and chrome-plated casting of notes. Here is Take No Prisoners. This section will talk about TV. We can still watch 3 educational shows. On Nickelodeon there is Mr. Wizard World, that continues since 1983, and on PBS Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, on air since 1968, and since 1969 there is Sesame Street, that introduces a new character, Elmo, that will become very famous. Sadly, in 1995 there will be the last seasons of 2 marvelous but obscure animated series, Sherlock Hound and Kid Video, both started in 1984. As far as I'm concerned, in this year there are some new series that can be interesting, but not a must-watch. 2 animated spin-off from Star Wars, Ewoks and Droids, debut this year. If Ewoks will last 2 seasons, because it finds some fans, Droids instead last only 1 season, because it's developed very badly, with awful main characters, although it started from an idea that would have attracted all the types of Star Wars fans. Then, 2 completely opposite animated series arrived: the more than American G.I. Joe, based on famous military toys, and the Spanish David the Gnome, David del Gnomo in original language. If David the Gnome has a peaceful and nature-loving atmosphere, G.I. Joe is a genuine Reaganian hymn. Just check the beginning of the 1987 movie and you will understand what I mean. But in this 1985 we can still have brand new seasons of 3 beloved animated series: Inspector Gadget, that continues since 1983, and Muppet Babies and Transformers, that last since 1984. And it's not enough. This year delivers 3 brand new, unforgettable animated series. The first cartoon has an high impact on the TV and also in the toy world. I'm talking, of course, about Jem and the Holograms, which will last for 3 seasons, until 1988, and it's an advertisement for the dolls, which will arrive in 1986. The story talks about Jerrica that, with a powerful computer with holograms, manages to transform herself into Jem. Then she founds the band Jem and the Holograms. So the girls and Rio, the Jerrica boyfriend, experience a lot of adventures, always opposed by a rival band, the Misfits, for the first 2 seasons, and then from the 3rd season onwards there will be the Stingers. If the toys will be directed at young girls, from a certain point of view, the animated series could be watched even by boys. Sure, since Jerrica never reveals to her boyfriend Rio that she's also Jem, there is this illogical triangle Jerrica, Jem and Rio, and there are some soap opera elements. But aside from these things, every episode is full of action, and since we are in the 80s, even when things are going bad, Jem and the Holograms are never hopeless, and they always try to be constructive and motivating. Another great thing is that for every song played by the bands, there is an highly creative, spectacular, over-the-top and truly outrageous video clip. It's surely an animated series that you shouldn't miss. Then there is another animated series with a strong woman. She-Ra is introduced by a movie, The Secret of the Sword, where we discover that she was kidnapped by a Hordak when she was a little child. He-Man departs from Eternia and goes to Etheria to find the rightful owner of the Sword of Protection, a sword that is similar to the one he owns. So he will meet, for the first time, his twin sister, She-Ra. The difference between the two series is clear. While He-Man lives on a planet called Eternia dominated by heroes that must protect themselves from the villains, on She-Ra's planet, Etheria, the situation is the opposite. The planet is dominated by the evil Horde, and the heroic warriors are the rebels who try to free the planet. The series retains all the advantages of the He-Man series, such as the advices at the end of the episode, but it certainly adds thickness to the screenplays. Of course, also in this animated series there is the comedy side, especially in the episode Flowers for Hordak. She-Ra will last until 1986, and despite the accusation that this series is only an advertising, many of the characters never got an action figure. For example, these evil Horde members will be never produced: Shadow Weaver, Octavia, Scorpia or Voltec. Finally, I can't forget another great animated series. I'm talking about M.A.S.K, that starts at the same time when the toys are launched. As for the toys, we find a cross between Transformers and G.I. Joe. M.A.S.K are a task force ready to intervene at the international level, and they are usually always against the evil organization called Venom. In addition to have the transformable vehicles, they also have helmets with specific powers for every character. A funny thing is that the leader of Venom has suspiciously the likeness of Stalin. The series, unfortunately, will last only 2 seasons, with the first season composed of 65 wonderful episodes and the second one composed of disappointing 10 episodes that are really dull. The Canadian band Exciter was founded in 1978 and in style helped the creation of the subgenre called speed metal and has a great influence on thrash metal. After 2 bombastic albums, in 1985 comes the third punch on the teeth, Long Live the Loud. The greatness of the album begins with the cover. Alan Craddock is the English artist behind the painting on the cover that was already used in 1980 as a cover for the book Door into the Fire. The artist has worked for the Judge Dredd comics and for the cover of some Conan books, and in fact the loud cover recalls the Frank Frazetta's Conan, and from some details also the Masters of the Universe toyline. That's why the 80s are so awesome. The album has no filler, and it goes straight like a steamroller from the beginning to the end. The lineup is still the classic one. At the guitar, Ritchie, at the bass, Johnson, and then there is the vocalist and the drummer, Biller. If you think about the violence of the songs, Biller is an authentic hero for being able to fulfill these 2 tasks in a terrific way, and the impetuous Long Live the Loud can demonstrate how destructive can be this band from the freezing Canada. With this album, the first Relentless Flashbackin and the first 1985 episode ends. In the next episode, I'll examine stuff, toys and cars from 1985. Please subscribe to Relentless Flashbackin channel on YouTube and follow the show on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And now, from Long Live the Loud album, here is Exciter with I Am the Beast. Stay outrageous, stay larger than life, Romeo, Foxtrot, Bravo!